The champagne glass almost slipped from Seung-ho's hand. He stood in Prosecutor General Shin's marble hallway, surrounded by politicians and criminals, pretending to be respectable, and none of it mattered anymore. Because the woman who'd just walked through the doorway carrying a tray of drinks had stopped his world cold. She was black, visibly pregnant, and trying very hard not to limp. The sleeve of her uniform had ridden up just enough to reveal a bracelet of purple bruises around her wrist. Fresh ones, the kind that came from someone grabbing too hard, holding too long. But it wasn't the bruises that made Seung-ho forget to breathe. It was her face. McKenna Williams, the girl who used to share her lunch with him when his mother couldn't afford to pack one. The girl whose mother had paid for his sister's medicine when pneumonia nearly killed her. The girl who'd cried at his mother's funeral and promised they'd always be friends. That was 15 years ago, before Seung-ho became the kind of man mothers warned their daughters about, before he built an empire on violence and fear, before he learned that loyalty was bought and trust was a weapon. He'd looked for her once, about 7 years back, when he first had money and power, wanted to repay the debt his family owed hers. But the trail went cold in America. Her mother had died, her father too. McKenna had disappeared into a country of 300 million people, and now, here she was, in Seoul, in this house, serving champagne to the same corrupt prosecutor who paid Seung-ho to make problems disappear. When their eyes met for a fraction of a second, she looked away quickly, professionally invisible, and offered champagne to a businessman Seung-ho had once threatened into cooperation. Her hands shook slightly. The champagne rippled in the glasses. She didn't recognize him. Why would she? The skinny, terrified 17-year-old boy had become something else entirely. Someone else entirely. But Seung-ho recognized her, and he recognized what those bruises meant. Someone in this house was hurting her. "Mr. Chang?" Prosecutor Shin's voice cut through Seung-ho's thoughts. "Is everything all right? You look distracted." Seung-ho turned back to the prosecutor with a practiced smile, the kind that never reached his eyes. "Everything's fine. I was just admiring your staff. Very professional." "Oh, the help?" Shin waved his hand dismissively. "Yes, well, we have standards. Though I must say, my wife has gone through quite a few maids recently. This one seems to be lasting longer." He lowered his voice, leaning in like they were sharing a joke. "Probably because she has nowhere else to go. Foreign, pregnant, no family. Rather desperate situation." The casual cruelty in his tone made Seung-ho want to break every bone in the man's face. Instead, he took a sip of champagne and said, "How fortunate for you." Indeed, these types are always the most grateful for employment. They don't complain, don't ask questions, don't cause trouble. Shin smiled. Very convenient. Across the room, McKenna disappeared through a doorway into what Seung-ho assumed was the kitchen. He watched the space where she'd been and felt something shift inside his chest. Something he hadn't felt in years. Rage, pure and focused. "Now, about our arrangement," Shin continued, oblivious. "There's been a situation that requires your particular expertise." Seung-ho barely heard him. His mind was already working through possibilities, calculating risks, planning moves 3 steps ahead. He'd come to this dinner expecting routine business, an exchange of money and information, the same dance he'd been doing with Shin for 3 years. But everything had just changed, because McKenna Williams, the daughter of the woman who'd saved his family, was in danger. And Seung-ho always paid his debts. He just needed to figure out how to help her without destroying everything he'd built. How to protect her from people who were supposed to be his allies. How to explain to her that the boy she'd known had become exactly the kind of monster her mother used to pray she'd never meet. Those were problems for later. Right now, he needed information. "Excuse me," Seung-ho said, interrupting whatever Shin was saying. "I need to use the restroom." Of course. Down the hall. Second door on the left. Chang walked in the opposite direction, toward the kitchen. He moved with purpose, like he belonged everywhere he went. People stepped aside automatically. That was the benefit of reputation. You didn't have to demand respect. People just gave it. The kitchen was industrial-sized, all stainless steel and efficient design. Makina stood at the sink, washing glasses with mechanical precision. Her shoulders were tense. Her breathing was too controlled, like she was forcing herself to stay calm. "So your mother used to hum while she washed dishes," Chang said quietly in Korean. "Old trot songs from the 80s. Makina spun around, water dripping from her hands. Her eyes went wide with surprise, then confusion, then something that might have been recognition struggling to surface. "I'm sorry, sir," she said in careful, accented Korean. "I didn't hear you come in. If you need something, I can—" "You don't remember me." It wasn't a question. Chang had expected this. 15 years changed people, especially when those years had been hard. "I look different now. But you look exactly like your mother." She stared at him, really looked. Her eyes traced his face, searching for something familiar in a stranger's features. He watched the exact moment recognition clicked into place, and watched her expression shift from confusion to shock to disbelief. "Chang His name came out barely a whisper. "Hi, Makina." Oh my God. She gripped the edge of the sink like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "I can't believe it. I thought you were. I thought maybe you'd—" "Died?" He shrugged. "Almost. A few times." She was looking at him differently now, taking in the expensive clothes, the confident posture, the hardness in his eyes that definitely hadn't been there when they were kids. He watched her putting pieces together, recognizing what he'd become. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "At this house?" "Business." Chang stepped closer, his voice dropping. "What are you doing here? And who put those bruises on you?" Her hand moved instinctively to cover her wrist, the universal gesture of someone trying to hide evidence. "I don't know what you're talking about. Makina, it's nothing. I'm fine." "You're 5 months pregnant, working for people who hurt you, and you're clearly terrified. That's not fine." Her jaw tightened with the kind of stubborn strength he remembered. Even as a kid, she'd never back down. Never let people see her break. "What do you care? We haven't seen each other in 15 years. You don't know anything about my life." "I know my mother would be dead if your mother hadn't spent her savings on medication. I know your mom made sure my sister and I had food, even when you couldn't pay us back. I know when my mother was dying in that hospital, your mother sat with her every night so she wouldn't be alone." His voice went rough with emotion he usually kept buried. I know I owe you both everything. So yes, Makina, I care." Tears sprang to her eyes, but she blinked them back furiously. "You can't help me. Nobody can. Just forget you saw me, Chang for both our sakes." "Why? What do they have on you?" "It's complicated." "I'm good with complicated." She laughed, bitter and sharp. "I bet you are. I heard the prosecutor call you Mr. Chang. Saw the way everyone looked at you like you could kill them with a word." Her voice dropped. "You're not just doing business here, are you? You're one of them. One of the people my mother warned me about." Chang didn't deny it. There was no point. "Yes." "Then you definitely can't help me. You'd only make things worse. Or I could make things better. Tell me what's going on." Before she could answer, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Makina's whole body went rigid with fear. She immediately stepped away from him, her expression shuddering into professional blankness that broke Chang-ho's heart. "I really should get back to work, sir," she said, her voice completely different now. Subservient. Scared. "If you need anything, please let me know." Madam Shin appeared in the doorway. She was in her 50s, perfectly styled, with eyes as cold as winter. Those eyes swept from Chang to Makina and back again, calculating, suspicious. "Mr. Chang," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Are you lost? Just looking for the restroom, Sung-ho replied smoothly. Your maid was giving me directions. I see. Madam Shin's gaze cut to McKenna like a knife. You. Back to the dishes. And remember what I said about being too friendly with the guests. Yes. Well, madame. Sung-ho let himself be escorted back to the party, but his mind was already racing. He needed to know everything. Why McKenna was in Seoul, how she'd ended up working for the Shins, who had put those bruises on her skin, and most importantly, how to get her out without starting a war. Because one thing was absolutely certain. He wasn't leaving her in this house, not with people who hurt her, not when he finally had the power to pay back the debt that had haunted him for 15 years. The dinner continued. Sung-ho smiled and made small talk, and discussed business arrangements. He played his part perfectly, the way he always did. But inside, he was planning, calculating, preparing for war. Because when Sung-ho saw those bruises on his pregnant childhood friend working as a maid in that mansion, everything changed. The prosecutor thought he had a valuable alliance. He had no idea he'd just made the worst enemy of his life. And McKenna thought she was alone and trapped with no way out. She had no idea salvation had just walked through the door. Dangerous, complicated, violent salvation. But salvation nonetheless. Before we dive deeper into how Sung-ho plans to save McKenna, let me know you're hooked. If this story is already getting to you, make sure you subscribe, because what happens next is going to blow your mind. The stakes get higher, the danger gets worse, and these two are about to risk everything. Sung-ho allowed himself to be escorted back to the party, but his mind was already working through possibilities. He needed information. He needed to understand what the Shins were holding over McKenna, and he needed to figure out how to help her without exposing his own vulnerabilities. The answer came from an unexpected source. 3 days later, his second-in-command, a sharp-eyed woman named Ji-won, dropped a folder on his desk. You asked me to look into Prosecutor Shin's household staff. And? There's only one who matches the description you gave. McKenna Williams, 29, American Korean. Been in Seoul for 3 years. Currently 5 months pregnant. Who's the father? Ji-won's expression darkened. Daniel Rodriguez, American military, stationed at Camp Humphreys, has a record of domestic disturbances that got buried. And get this, he's been moonlighting as muscle for the Park faction. Sung-ho's head snapped up. The Park faction was his biggest rival, constantly testing his territory, looking for weaknesses. So, are you certain? Very. We've been watching Park's movements, and Rodriguez showed up twice in surveillance photos. He's low-level right now, but he's eager to prove himself. Word is he's looking for someone, an ex-girlfriend who ran. McKenna? Probably. And there's more. Ji-won flipped open the folder. Remember that hit and run 6 months ago? The college student who died? Turns out the Shin family's son was driving. There were witnesses, but they all recanted. Except one witness statement disappeared entirely from the file. The witness was listed as a household employee. Sung-ho leaned back in his chair. They're blackmailing her. She saw their son commit murder, and they're forcing her silence. By threatening what? She doesn't have family here, on no real assets they could seize. The baby. The realization made his blood run cold. They're threatening to take the baby. Ji-won whistled low. That's dark, even for Shin. So what do you want to do about it? I want to know everything. Daniel Rodriguez's schedule, his weaknesses, his connections to Park. I want to know every dirty secret the Shin family has buried. And I want eyes on McKenna. If she's in danger, I need to know immediately. Boss, are you sure about this? Getting involved in Shin's household could compromise our arrangement. He's our biggest political asset. I'm sure. Ji-won studied him for a long moment. This girl must be pretty special. Her mother saved my family. I'm returning the favor. If you say so. Ji-won headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I hope she's worth the risk. So did Seung-ho. The next time he saw McKenna was 2 weeks later, and the circumstances were far worse. He got the call at 3 in the morning. His security team had spotted Daniel Rodriguez near the Shin mansion. Before Seung-ho could mobilize his people, the situation escalated. Daniel had found McKenna. By the time Seung-ho arrived, it was over. Police cars surrounded the mansion, their lights painting everything in harsh blue and red. Seung-ho stayed back, watching from across the street, as officers led McKenna out in handcuffs. Her face was swollen, blood trickling from a cut on her lip. But she was walking, her head high despite the restraints. Daniel was also in custody, screaming obscenities and struggling against the officers holding him. Seung-ho pulled out his phone and called Prosecutor Shin. The man answered on the second ring, his voice smooth despite the late hour. "Mr. Chang, I assume you've heard about tonight's excitement. What happened?" "Our maid's boyfriend broke into the house looking for her. There was an altercation. My wife was threatened. We had no choice but to call the police." "And the maid?" "She's being charged as an accessory. We have reason to believe she helped him plan the break-in. Very unfortunate, after we gave her a job when no one else would." Lies. All of it. Seung-ho could hear the satisfaction in Shin's voice. The prosecutor was tying up loose ends, getting rid of the one witness who could connect his son to murder. "What will happen to her?" Seung-ho asked, keeping his tone neutral. "Prison, most likely. She's a foreign national with no real ties to Korea. The courts won't be sympathetic. And of course, there's the matter of her pregnancy. Child services will have to get involved. Such a tragedy, really. They were going to take her baby. They were going to lock her up and steal her child, and there was nothing she could do about it. Unless Seung-ho intervened. "Prosecutor Shin," he said carefully, "I'd like to ask a favor." The pause on the other end was calculating. "I'm listening." "Release the girl to me. Drop all charges." "And why would I do that?" "Because I'm asking, and because I'm willing to make it worth your while." Another pause. "How worth my while?" Seung-ho named a figure that made his accountant weep, but money was replaceable. Debts of honor weren't. "That's quite generous," Shin said slowly. "But I'm not sure it's enough. The girl is a liability. She knows things. She'll disappear. I'll make sure of it. You'll never have to worry about her again. You're very interested in a maid you've met once. Why?" "I have my reasons. Do we have a deal, or not?" Shin considered. "Double your offer, and make sure the boyfriend has an accident in custody. Something that keeps him quiet permanently." Seung-ho's jaw clenched. "The boyfriend gets deported with a record that ensures he never comes back." "I don't kill for you, Shin. We've been over this. Fine, deported. But I want triple the original amount." "Done. Then we have a deal. I'll have her released in the morning. But Mr. Chang, if this comes back to bite me, our arrangement ends." "Understood?" "Perfectly." Seung-ho hung up and stared at the police cars. So he'd just spent a fortune and possibly compromised his most valuable political connection. For a woman who might not even want his help. For a debt 15 years old. His sister would say he was being stupid. Ji-won would say he was being sentimental. They were probably both right. But as they loaded McKenna into the police car, and she turned her head, catching sight of him across the street, their eyes met again. And in that moment, Seung-ho knew he'd made the right choice, even if it cost him everything. McKenna spent the night in a holding cell that smelled like disinfectant and despair. Her whole body ached from the fight with Daniel. He'd grabbed her in the kitchen while she was preparing breakfast, his hand over her mouth, his breath hot and angry against her ear. "Did you really think you could hide from me?" She'd fought back. He'd scratched his face, kneed him hard enough to make him let go. Screamed loud enough to wake the whole house. Madam Shin had appeared with security, but instead of helping, instead of protecting her, the woman had smiled that cold smile and called the police on them both. Now McKenna sat on a concrete bench, her hands wrapped around her stomach, talking to her baby in whispers. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I tried to keep us safe. I really did." The baby kicked, strong and insistent, still fighting, still alive. "That's right," McKenna murmured. "We're fighters. We don't give up." But she had no idea what to do next. No money for a lawyer. No friends who could help. Daniel would probably get a slap on the wrist because of his military status. She'd get deported, or worse. And the baby, her baby, would end up in the system. The thought made her want to scream. Dawn was breaking when an officer appeared at her cell. "You're being released." McKenna looked up, certain she'd misheard. "What?" "All charges dropped. You're free to go." "I don't understand. How?" The officer shrugged. "Someone made a call. Don't question it. Just sign the papers and get out." Her hands shook as she signed her name. They gave her back her belongings, a plastic bag with her phone and her mother's photograph. The phone was dead. The photograph was crumpled, but intact. She walked out into the morning sunlight, expecting to find herself alone on the street. Instead, Seong-ho was leaning against a black car, looking like he hadn't slept at all. "You," she said. "Me," he agreed. "You got me out." "Yes." "How?" "Why?" He pushed off from the car and opened the passenger door. "Well, best get in. We need to talk somewhere private." "I'm not getting in a car with you. I don't know you anymore. For all I know, you're worse than the Shins." "I probably am," he said calmly. "But I'm the only option you have right now. So you can get in willingly, or you can stand here arguing until the Shins realize you're free and find a way to lock you up again. Your choice." McKenna hated that he was right. She hated the casual way he said it, like her whole life was just a chess game to him. But she got in the car because he was right. She was out of options. They drove in silence through Seoul's morning traffic. McKenna watched the city wake up, people heading to work, street vendors setting up their carts, the world continuing like her life wasn't falling apart. "Where are we going?" she finally asked. "Well, somewhere safe." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer you're getting right now." She turned to look at him properly. The boy she'd known had been skinny and scared, jumping at shadows, always worried about his next meal. This man was different. Solid. Dangerous. The kind of person her mother had warned her about. "What do you do, Seong-ho? And don't say business. I'm not stupid." "I run a criminal organization. Smuggling, protection, information brokering. Some gambling. No drugs, no human trafficking, no prostitution. I have lines I don't cross." The honesty surprised her. "You're telling me this why?" "Because you're going to hear it eventually. Better from me than someone else. And you got me out of jail because I told you. I owe your mother. My mother's been dead for 15 years. Some debts don't expire." McKenna leaned her head back against the seat. "This is insane. Yesterday I was washing dishes. Now I'm in a car with a criminal who just admitted to running a whole organization. What's next? You tell me you're secretly a vampire." He actually smiled at that. A real smile, not the cold expression he'd worn at the prosecutor's house. "No vampires, just a guy trying to pay back a favor. By kidnapping me? By offering you a choice." "What kind of choice?" Seong-ho pulled the car into an underground parking garage. The building above was sleek and modern, all glass and steel. He killed the engine and turned to face her. "The Shins are holding the hit and run over you. They're threatening to take your baby. Daniel is in custody, but he'll be out soon. And when he is, he'll come looking for you again. You have no money, no job, and nowhere to go. Does that about cover it?" McKenna's throat tightened. Hearing it all laid out like that made it real in a way she'd been trying to avoid. "Yes. I can fix all of it. Daniel gets deported with a criminal record that ensures he never sets foot in Korea again. The Shins lose their leverage because I'll have enough dirt on them to bury their whole family. You and your baby get protection, money, a safe place to live. What's the catch? You work for me. Specifically, you go back to the Shin house, and you gather evidence. Documents, recordings, photographs, anything that proves what they've been doing. You want me to spy on them? Yes, McKenna laughed, sharp and brittle. You're crazy. They already suspect me of helping Daniel break in. They'll never let me back in that house. Prosecutor Shin thinks I bought you from him to make you disappear. He thinks you're going to vanish and never be a problem again. Which means he feels safe. Safe people get careless. His wife will need a new maid. You'll apply through a different agency, different name, and she'll hire you because good help is hard to find. And if they recognize me, they won't. We'll change your appearance enough. Different hair, colored contacts, some prosthetics to change your face shape. You'll be surprised what a good disguise can do. It was a terrible plan, risky and dangerous, and probably illegal in about 17 different ways. But it was also the only plan anyone had offered her. What if I say no? McKenna asked. Then I put you on a plane back to the States with enough money to start over. No strings. The debt to your mother gets paid either way. You'd really do that? Just let me go. Seung-ho met her eyes. Yes, I'm not going to force you into anything, McKenna. This is your choice. She wanted to believe him. Part of her, the part that remembered sharing school lunches and laughing at stupid jokes, did believe him. But the rest of her had learned the hard way that people always wanted something. If I do this, she said slowly, I want more than just protection. Name it. Daniel doesn't just get deported. I want evidence that he's connected to criminal activity. Real evidence that follows him back to the States. I want him to face consequences there too. Seung-ho nodded. Done. What else? My baby. If something happens to me, I want a guarantee that my child is taken care of. Legal documents, trust fund, everything. You'll have it. And I want to know everything. No surprises, no secret plans. If I'm risking my life for this, I deserve to know why. What do you really want from the Shins? He was quiet for a moment, considering. Then he said, Prosecutor Shin has been my political shield for 3 years. He keeps the law off my back, and I pay him well. But he's getting greedy and sloppy. I need insurance, proof of his crimes that I can use to control him if necessary. His household is the weak point. His wife runs it like her personal kingdom, and she's careless. People talk to maids. Maids see things. So I'm expendable. If this goes wrong, you lose nothing. If this goes wrong, I lose my best chance at controlling Shin. And I lose the daughter of the woman who saved my family. That's not nothing. McKenna studied his face, looking for the lie. She couldn't find it. Okay. Okay, you'll do it? Okay, I'll think about it. But first, I need food and sleep, and a chance to process the fact that my life turned into an action movie overnight. Seung-ho actually laughed at that. Fair enough. Come on. The apartment he took her to was on the 20th floor, spacious and clean, but not ostentatious. It looked like a place someone actually lived, not a showroom. This is yours? McKenna asked. One of several. This one's safest. Doorman knows me. Security is tight. And it's registered under a shell company. No one can trace it back to me or you. There were 2 bedrooms, a full kitchen, and windows that overlooked the Han River. McKenna stood at the glass, watching the water flow, trying to make sense of everything. There's food in the refrigerator, Seung-ho said. Clothes in the closet that should fit. My people guessed your size. If they got it wrong, make a list, and someone will bring what you need. Your people. The ones who work for me. You'll meet them eventually. McKenna turned to face him. This is really happening. This is really my life now. Only if you choose it. You can still walk away. To what? I have nothing, Seung-ho. No home, no job, no family. You know what's funny? I came to Korea looking for my mother's past, looking for connection. Instead, I found everything she ran away from. Your mother ran from Korea. She never told you? She left when she was 22. Said Seoul had too many ghosts, too many people trying to drag her down. She built a whole new life in America. McKenna touched her stomach. I thought I could do the same in reverse. Stupid. Not stupid. Hopeful. There's a difference. Hope hasn't gotten me very far. Seung-ho moved to stand beside her at the window. Your mother used to say that hope was the only thing poverty couldn't steal. She'd serve rice and soup to people who couldn't pay and say, tomorrow they'll do better. Tomorrow will be different. And was it? Different? Sometimes. Not always. But she never stopped believing it could be. McKenna felt tears burning in her eyes. I miss her. I miss both my parents. I miss feeling like someone in the world actually gave a damn if I lived or died. I give a damn, Seung-ho said quietly. She looked at him then, really looked, saw the exhaustion around his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. He'd spent the whole night getting her out of jail, had probably paid a fortune to make it happen. And he was still here, making sure she was safe. Why? She whispered. It can't just be because of a debt. People don't do things like this just because someone was kind 15 years ago. Your mother didn't just give us money, McKenna. She gave us dignity. When my father died, and everyone treated us like garbage, like we were contaminated by his failure, your mother treated us like humans. She made sure my sister and I had food, made sure we could go to school without being ashamed of our clothes. When my mother got sick, yours sat with her in the hospital every night so she wouldn't be alone. His voice went rough. She died alone anyway, while I was out trying to earn money and my sister was at school. But those last weeks, your mother made sure she knew someone cared. So yes, I'm doing this because of a debt. But it's not just about money or obligation. It's about being the kind of person who pays back, kindness with kindness. The silence between them felt heavy with things unsaid. McKenna wanted to trust him, wanted to believe that in this whole mess of her life, she'd found one person who wasn't trying to use her. But trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. I need to sleep, she said, stepping back. Can we talk about all of this later? Of course. I'll be on the couch if you need anything. You're staying? Just until you feel safe. Then I'll leave you alone. McKenna nodded and retreated to the bedroom. It was clean and simple, with a bed that looked like heaven after the concrete bench in the jail cell. She collapsed onto it, fully clothed, and was asleep in seconds. She woke 6 hours later to the smell of cooking. For a confused moment, she thought she was back in her parents' house, that her mother was making lunch, and everything had been a bad dream. Then reality crashed back. The pregnancy, Daniel, the shins, Seung-ho. She dragged herself out of bed and found Seung-ho in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove. He'd changed clothes, looked more rested. On the counter were ingredients for what looked like kimchi jjigae. You cook? McKenna asked. Had to learn. Takeout gets expensive, and you can't always trust restaurants when you have enemies. Paranoid much? I'm alive, aren't I? That's because I'm paranoid. He ladled stew into bowls. Sit. Eat. You need to keep your strength up. The stew was good. Really good. McKenna ate 2 bowls before she realized how hungry she'd been. Seung-ho watched her with something like satisfaction. What? She asked. You eat like your mother. She used to attack food like it might escape. Despite everything, McKenna smiled. Dad used to say she had 2 speeds, asleep and hungry. They fell into conversation after that, trading memories of people long gone. It felt normal in a way nothing had felt for months, like she was talking to an old friend instead of a criminal who'd just offered her a spy mission. That's when McKenna realized how dangerous this was. Not the spying or the shins or even Daniel. The real danger was sitting across from her, making her laugh, making her feel like maybe she wasn't alone. She couldn't afford to care about Seung-ho, couldn't afford to trust anyone that completely, which meant she needed insurance. While Seung-ho was washing dishes, McKenna excused herself to the bathroom. She pulled out her phone, finally charged, and opened the voice recording app. Then she went back out. "So tell me more about this plan," she said, setting the phone on the table face down. "If I'm going to do this, I need details." Seung-ho explained everything. The fake identity, the timeline, what kind of information he needed. McKenna listened and asked questions, making sure every word was captured clearly on the recording. It felt like betrayal. It probably was betrayal, but it was also survival. If Seung-ho turned on her, she'd have proof of his plans, something she could trade for safety, something that proved she was more than just a pawn. "Hey, I know you're probably on the edge of your seat right now, wondering what happens next. Make sure you're following along, because this story is about to get even more intense. Drop a comment and let me know what you think McKenna should do. Trust Seung-ho or run." 3 days later, McKenna looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized her reflection. Her natural hair was hidden under a straight black wig. Brown contacts covered her dark eyes. Prosthetics subtly changed her nose and jawline. She looked Korean enough to pass casual inspection, different enough that the Shins wouldn't connect her to their former maid. "What do you think?" Ji-won asked. She was Seung-ho's second in command, a woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and sharper instincts. "I think I look like someone else." "Good. That's the point." Ji-won handed her a new phone. "This has a hidden recording app. Double-tap the side button and it starts recording everything. The camera in your necklace is voice-activated. Say the word 'clear' and it starts filming." McKenna touched the delicate silver necklace. "This feels like a spy movie." "It basically is, except if you get caught, there's no government extraction team, just us." "Comforting." Ji-won's expression softened slightly. "Look, I know this is terrifying, but you're stronger than you think. I've seen your file. You survived an abusive relationship, being homeless in a foreign country, and the Shin family. That takes guts. Or stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing." Ji-won moved toward the door. "Seung-ho wants to see you before you go. He's in his office." McKenna found him behind a massive desk, reviewing documents. He looked up when she entered and did a double take. "Wow," he said. "Is that a good wow or a bad wow?" You look completely different, wow. If I didn't know it was you, I'd never recognize you." Mission accomplished then. McKenna sat down across from him. "So this is really happening. Last chance to back out. And if I do? Plane ticket? Money? Clean slate." She believed him. That was the scary part. "I'm not backing out, but I want to revise our deal." His eyebrows rose. "Oh? You said you'd handle Daniel. I want to be there when he's deported. I want to see him leave." "That's risky. If he sees you, he won't recognize me any more than the Shins will. Please. I need to see it end. I need to know he's really gone." Seung-ho studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay, we can arrange that. Anything else?" "Yeah. If I'm going to risk my life getting you information, I want to know what you're really planning. You said you need insurance on Shin, but that's not the whole story, is it?" "No," he admitted. "It's not. So tell me the truth." He leaned back in his chair, considering how much to reveal. Prosecutor Shin is protected by people higher up the food chain. Politicians, judges, other criminals. To take him down, I need evidence so damning that even his protectors will cut him loose. Evidence that can't be ignored or buried. Take him down? I thought you just wanted insurance. I did. Then I found out he's been skimming from our arrangement, keeping money that should go to me, using my protection to expand his own operations. Seung-ho's voice went cold. And he's involved in human trafficking through his charity foundation. That crosses one of my lines. McKenna felt sick. The charity? The one that's supposed to help orphans? Yes, he's been moving kids across borders, selling them. I have some evidence, but not enough to act without starting a war. I need more. And you think his wife knows about this? I think she handles the money, which means she has records, bank accounts, transaction histories, client lists. That's what I need you to find. This was bigger than McKenna had realized, more dangerous, but also more important. If I find this evidence and you expose him, what happens to the kids? They get recovered, placed in real protective services. The operation gets shut down. Promise me that. Promise me the kids come first. I promise. McKenna took a breath. Okay. Then let's do this. The next morning, when she applied for the maid position at the Shin House under her new identity, Park Min-seo. The agency sent her over for an interview that same day. Madam Shin looked her up and down with critical eyes. You're young. I'm 28, ma'am. But I've been working since I was 15. Your Korean is very good for someone from Busan. Seung-ho's people had created a whole backstory. McKenna had spent 2 days memorizing every detail. My mother was strict about speaking properly, ma'am. Can you cook? Yes, ma'am. Traditional dishes and some Western food. My last maid was useless. She let her personal drama interfere with work, and look where it got her, in jail. Madam Shin's smile was cruel. I expect complete dedication. No boyfriends, no distractions. You live here, you work here, and you keep your nose out of family business. Understood? Yes, ma'am. When can you start? Immediately, if you need me. Good. The room is small but adequate. Wages are paid monthly. Any breakage comes out of your pay. And Park Min-seo, one more thing. Yes, ma'am? I go through maids quickly because I have high standards. Don't give me a reason to fire you. I won't, ma'am. Just like that, McKenna was back in the house that had been her prison. Back in the same small room, wearing the same uniform. Except this time, she had a purpose. This time, she was hunting. The first week was careful reconnaissance. McKenna mapped out the house, learned the family's routines, figured out where Madam Shin kept her files. The woman had a home office that she kept locked, but she was careless with keys. They hung on a hook in her bedroom. The second week, McKenna made her first move. While the family was at dinner, she slipped into the office and photographed documents, bank statements showing transfers to offshore accounts, receipts from the charity foundation that didn't match the public records. She said, "Clear," and her necklace camera captured everything. It felt dangerous and exhilarating, like she was finally fighting back instead of just surviving. But on the 10th day, something went wrong. McKenna was cleaning the prosecutor's study when she found a folder hidden in his desk drawer. Inside were photographs, kids, dozens of them, different ages, different backgrounds. And next to each photo, a number. Prices. Her hand shook as she photographed each page. These were the children, the ones being sold. Some as young as 5 or 6. She was so focused on the documents that she didn't hear the footsteps until it was too late. "What are you doing?" McKenna spun around. The Shin's son stood in the doorway, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. This was the man who'd killed someone and walked away free. The man whose crime had trapped her in the first place. "I'm cleaning, sir. Your mother asked me to dust your father's study." "My mother is at her salon. She didn't ask you anything." "She left instructions this morning, sir." He moved closer, and McKenna's heart raced. If he searched her, if he found the camera, if he looked at his father's desk and noticed the drawer was open. "You're new," he said. "Yes, sir. 2 weeks. What happened to the last maid? The foreign one?" "I don't know, sir. The agency didn't say." He was close enough now that she could smell his cologne. Close enough to be dangerous. "You look familiar. Do I know you?" I don't think so, sir. I've never been to Seoul before this job. His hand shot out and grabbed her chin, forcing her to look up at him. Makina's mind raced through options. She could scream, but who would help? She could fight, but then her cover was blown. She could run, but where? Please, sir, she said, letting her voice shake. I'm just trying to do my job. For a long moment he stared at her. Then he released her with a shove that sent her stumbling back. Get out, and tell my mother to stop hiring such skittish help. Yes, sir. Sorry, sir. Makina fled, her whole body trembling. She made it to her room and locked the door before collapsing on the bed. That had been too close. Way too close. She pulled out her phone and texted Sung-ho. Problem. The sun almost caught me. The response came immediately. Are you safe? For now. Do you want out? Her finger hovered over the keyboard. It would be so easy to say yes, to run before things got worse. But then she thought about those photographs, those kids with price tags. No, she typed. But I need the rest of the documents, the ones showing where the kids are being sent. Can your people track that? If you can get me account numbers and names, yes. But Makina, don't take unnecessary risks. A little late for that. She spent the next hour uploading everything she'd photographed to a secure server Sung-ho had set up. Then she deleted the photos from her phone and reset the camera necklace. Tomorrow, she'd go back into the prosecutor's study. She'd get the rest of the evidence. And then maybe, just maybe, she could help save those kids. But first, she had to survive the night. Madam Shin returned home in a foul mood. She screamed at Makina for the way she'd folded the towels, for the temperature of the bathwater, for existing. It was almost a relief. The familiar abuse was easier to handle than the fear of being discovered. That night, lying in her small room, Makina felt the baby kick, strong and steady. A reminder of why she was doing this. Not just for the money or the protection, but because she wanted her child to grow up in a world where people like the Shins didn't win. Her phone buzzed, a message from Sung-ho. Daniel's deportation is scheduled for 3 days from now. Do you still want to be there? Yes, she typed back. I'll send a car. And Makina? Be careful. You're doing good work, but it doesn't matter if you get hurt in the process. She stared at the message for a long time before responding. Why do you care so much? The answer took a while to come. Because you remind me that not everyone in this world is garbage. Don't prove me wrong. Makina smiled despite herself. Then she pulled up the recording app and played back the conversations she'd captured. Sung-ho's voice filled the small room, talking about his plans, his operations, his secrets, insurance, just in case. But as she listened, she realized something. She didn't want to use this against him. She wanted to trust him. Wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, one person in her life was exactly who he claimed to be. That scared her more than anything the Shins could do, because trust was the most dangerous thing she could offer, and Sung-ho was the most dangerous person she could give it to. 3 days felt like 3 years. Makina moved through the Shin household like a ghost, cleaning and cooking and playing the perfect maid while her mind raced with plans. She'd managed to get back into the prosecutor's study twice more, each time stealing more evidence. Account numbers, names, locations where children had been sent. Every piece of information went to Sung-ho. Every night, she uploaded files and waited for his confirmation that he'd received them. The routine became almost comforting. Dangerous work followed by the small ping of his message. Got it. Good work. On the second night, he added, You're braver than you know. On the third night, he sent, Car comes at 6 tomorrow morning. But wear something warm. Makina barely slept. When her alarm went off at 5, she was already dressed in clothes Ji-won had smuggled to her. Jeans, a sweater, a jacket that hid her growing belly. She left a note saying she had a family emergency and slipped out before anyone woke. The car was waiting exactly where Sung-ho said it would be. Ji-won sat in the driver's seat, her expression unreadable. "Morning," McKenna said, climbing in. "You look terrible." "Thanks. I feel terrible." "Good. Means you're taking this seriously." Ji-won pulled into traffic. "The deportation happens at 8. We'll be watching from a distance. You don't approach, you don't speak, you just watch. Understood?" "Yes." "And if he somehow recognizes you?" "He won't. I don't look anything like I did." "People recognize more than faces. They recognize the way you move, the way you hold yourself. So stay back and stay quiet." They drove to Incheon Airport in tense silence. The sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. McKenna watched the city pass by and wondered if this was real. If Daniel would actually be gone. If she could finally stop looking over her shoulder. Sung-ho was waiting in the observation area, dressed casually in jeans and a dark jacket. He looked almost normal, almost like the boy she'd known instead of the crime boss he'd become. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey, you ready for this?" "I don't know. Am I supposed to feel something? Because mostly I just feel numb." "That's normal. Closure doesn't always feel like closure." They watched through the window as airport security processed the deportees. Daniel was there, handcuffed and angry, shouting at the officers escorting him. Even from a distance, McKenna could see the rage on his face. "He looks the same," she murmured. "I thought maybe prison would have changed him, made him smaller somehow. But he's exactly the same." "Men like him don't change," Sung-ho said. "They just find new victims." "Not anymore. You said he'd have a record that follows him? Assault, connection to organized crime, violation of military code. He'll be dishonorably discharged and flagged in every system. If he so much as jaywalks, he'll end up back in jail." McKenna watched as they led Daniel toward the gate. He was still shouting, still fighting. And then, just for a second, he turned and looked directly at the observation window, directly at her. McKenna's breath caught. Could he see her? Did he know? But Daniel's gaze swept past without recognition. He saw a stranger. Nothing more. "It's over," Ji-won said. "He's gone." McKenna waited until the plane was taxiing down the runway before she let herself believe it. Daniel was on that plane. Daniel was leaving. Daniel would never hurt her again. She started crying without meaning to, big, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. Sung-ho pulled her against his chest and let her cry, his hand gentle on her back. "I've got you," he said quietly. "You're safe now. I've got you." Ji-won looked away, giving them privacy. When McKenna finally pulled herself together, her eyes were swollen and her nose was running, and she probably looked like a disaster. "Sorry," she mumbled. "Don't be. You earned those tears." Sung-ho handed her a handkerchief. "Come on. Oh, let's get you some breakfast." They went to a small restaurant near the airport. McKenna ate kimchi jjigae and rice, while Sung-ho and Ji-won discussed business in low voices. She was too exhausted to follow the details. Something about shipments and territories, and someone named Park who was causing trouble. "The Park faction?" McKenna asked, remembering what Ji-won had told her weeks ago. Sung-ho looked surprised she'd been listening. "Yes, they've been testing our borders, getting aggressive. Is that going to be a problem?" "Everything's a problem. It's just a matter of which problems we solve first." He studied her face. "You should rest today. No going back to the Shin house until tomorrow." "I can't just disappear. Madam Shin will get suspicious." "Tell her your mother is sick. She won't care enough to verify." "I don't have a mother. She's dead, remember?" "Park Min-seo's mother is alive and well in Busan," Ji-won said. "We built her a whole life. Use it." McKenna had forgotten about her fake identity. It was getting hard to remember who she was supposed to be. "Okay, fine," One day, Seong-ho drove her back to the safe house apartment. The space felt different now, less like a hiding place, and more like home. McKenna collapsed on the couch, exhausted but wired. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Sure. When did you decide to become this? A criminal, I mean. Was it a choice, or did it just happen?" Seong-ho sat down beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "Bit of both. After my mother died, I was 17, and angry and had a sister to support. I started running errands for a local gang. Some small stuff at first, then bigger jobs. By the time I realized what I was becoming, I was too deep to get out. Do you regret it? Sometimes. But mostly I think about the alternative. My sister got to finish school, got to go to university. She's a doctor now, living in London with a husband who treats her well and 2 kids. She got out because I stayed in. So, no, I don't regret it. Does she know what you do?" "She knows enough. We don't talk about details." He smiled sadly. "She sends me pictures of the kids on their birthdays. That's as close to normal as I get." McKenna felt a sudden rush of affection for this complicated, dangerous man who'd saved his sister and was now trying to save her. "You're a good person doing bad things, or a bad person doing 1 or 2 good things. It depends on perspective. I choose to believe the first one. Why? Because I need to believe that good people exist, even in places like this." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Seong-ho's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his expression darkened. "What's wrong?" McKenna asked. "The evidence you gathered. My analysts went through it. It's worse than we thought." "How much worse?" "Prosecutor Shin isn't just moving kids across borders. He's been running this operation for 8 years, hundreds of children, maybe more." Seong-ho's jaw clenched. "And he has partners, other prosecutors, judges, politicians. This goes all the way to the top." McKenna felt sick. "What are you going to do?" "I need more evidence, enough to take down the whole network, which means you need to keep digging." "Seong-ho, his son almost caught me. If I push too hard, I know it's dangerous. But those kids don't have anyone else fighting for them." He was right. McKenna hated that he was right. "Okay, I'll go back tomorrow. But if things get too risky, I'm out." "Deal?" "Deal." That night, McKenna dreamed of children's faces, the ones from the photographs. They were calling for help, but she couldn't reach them. She woke up gasping, her heart racing. Her phone showed 3 in the morning. Too early to be awake, too late to fall back asleep. She got up and found Seong-ho in the kitchen, making tea. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked. "Never sleep much. Occupational hazard." He poured her a cup. "Bad dreams?" "The kids. I keep seeing their faces. That means you still have a conscience. Hold on to that. It's easy to lose in this world." They sat at the kitchen table, drinking tea and not talking. It should have been awkward, but it wasn't. It felt right, like they'd done this 1,000 times before. "Seong-ho," McKenna said suddenly, "if we pull this off, if we take down the Shins and save those kids, what happens to me after? What do you want to happen?" "I don't know. I haven't let myself think that far ahead. It's been about survival for so long." "Then start thinking. Because when this is over, you get to choose your next chapter." "What if I choose wrong?" "Then you choose again. That's the benefit of being alive. You get to keep choosing." McKenna smiled. "When did you become so wise?" "Around the 3rd time someone tried to kill me. Really puts things in perspective." She laughed, genuine and surprised. You're ridiculous." "So, I've been told." The moment felt fragile and precious, like something that could shatter if either of them pushed too hard. So McKenna just sat there, drinking tea with a man who was equal parts danger and safety, and let herself imagine a future where she got to keep choosing. The next day, she returned to the Shin household. Madam Shin barely acknowledged her absence, too focused on planning some charity gala. The irony wasn't lost on McKenna, a gala for a foundation that trafficked children. "I need you to organize the donation records," Madam Sheehan said. "Everything must be perfect for the auditors." McKenna's pulse quickened. "The donation records? Where are those kept?" "In my office. I'll give you access tomorrow. Tonight, focus on cleaning the ballroom. We're hosting the gala here next week." This was it. The opportunity she'd been waiting for. Access to the financial records that would prove everything. That night, she texted Chang. "I'm getting access to the donation records tomorrow. Be careful. If they're bringing in auditors, they'll be watching everything closely. I know. But this might be our only chance. Then make it count. And McKenna, thank you. For doing this. For being brave." She stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed, "Don't thank me yet. We're not done." But her finger hovered over the send button. She wanted to write something else. Something honest. Something about how he made her feel safe and terrified at the same time. How she was starting to care about him in ways that definitely complicated their arrangement. Instead, she deleted it and sent the first message. Some truths were too dangerous to speak. The next morning, Madam Shin unlocked her office and gestured McKenna inside. "File everything by date. I want perfect organization. Can you manage that?" "Yes, ma'am." McKenna worked slowly, methodically, photographing every document she could. Bank transfers, wire receipts, emails coordinating shipments. The word shipments made her want to vomit. They were talking about children like they were cargo. She was on the fourth filing cabinet when she found something that made her blood run cold. A ledger listing names, ages, and destinations. Next to each entry was a status: delivered, in transit, or disposed. Disposed. McKenna's hands shook so badly she almost dropped the camera. She photographed every page, forcing herself to stay calm, to keep working. She could fall apart later. Right now, she had a job to do. She was almost finished when she heard voices in the hallway. The prosecutor and his wife arguing about something. McKenna quickly put the files back and grabbed a stack of papers to make it look like she was organizing. The door opened. Prosecutor Shin walked in, his expression stormy. He stopped when he saw McKenna. "Who are you?" he demanded. "Park Min-seo, sir. Your wife asked me to organize the donation records. I didn't authorize anyone to access these files." Madam Shin appeared behind him. "I authorized it. She's my maid. I trust her." "You trust too easily." The prosecutor moved closer to McKenna. "Have we met before?" "No, sir. I just started working here a few weeks ago." He studied her face with eyes that missed nothing. McKenna kept her expression neutral, unsubservient, boring. Just another maid. Nothing to see here. "Make sure she signs a non-disclosure agreement," the prosecutor told his wife. "Everything in this office is confidential." "Of course. And get this finished today. I don't want staff lingering in here." He left, and McKenna allowed herself to breathe. That had been close. Too close. Madam Shin thrust a paper at her. "Sign this. It says you'll keep everything you see in this house confidential. If you violate it, we can sue you for everything you have and everything you'll ever earn." McKenna signed Park Min-seo's name and tried not to think about how many laws she was breaking. She finished photographing the documents by late afternoon and uploaded everything to Seung-ho's secure server from her room. Her hands were still shaking. The things she'd seen, the casual evil documented in those files, it was too much. Her phone rang. Seung-ho. "I got the files," he said without preamble. "This is incredible. This is enough to bury them." "Did you see the ledger? The one with disposed listed?" "Yes." His voice was tight with controlled rage. "We're moving up the timeline. I'm going to the authorities tomorrow." "Wait, what? I thought you said you needed more?" "This is enough. More than enough. I'm not letting this continue a single day longer than necessary. But what about your arrangement with Shin? Won't this expose you too? I'm willing to take that risk. Some things are more important than protecting myself. McKenna felt something warm bloom in her chest. You're really doing this. You're really going to save those kids. We're doing this. None of this would be possible without you. So, what happens now? Now I contact someone I trust in the federal prosecutor's office. They'll raid the Shin household within 48 hours. You need to be gone before that happens. When do I leave? Tonight. Pack your things. Ji-won will pick you up at midnight. Madam Shin will notice if I disappear. Let her notice. By the time she figures out what's happening, it'll be too late. McKenna ended the call and stared at her tiny room. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. The Shins were going down, and the kids would be saved, and she could finally be free. But freedom came with its own terror. What would she do now? Where would she go? She pushed the thoughts aside and started packing. She didn't have much. Clothes, her mother's photograph, and the burner phone Seung-ho had given her. Everything else belonged to the Shins. At 11:30, she slipped out of her room and headed for the servants' entrance. The house was dark and quiet. Everyone asleep. She was almost to the door when the lights flicked on. The Shin's son stood blocking her path. Going somewhere? He asked. McKenna's heart stopped. I have the night off. I was going to visit a friend. With all your belongings? He gestured to her bag. Try again. It's not what you think. I think you're a spy. I think you've been stealing information from my family. And I think you're about to regret ever setting foot in this house. He pulled out his phone. McKenna didn't think. She just reacted. She grabbed a vase from the hall table and threw it at him. It shattered against his shoulder, and he stumbled back, cursing. McKenna ran. She burst through the door and into the night, running as fast as her pregnant body would allow. Behind her, she heard shouting. Lights turned on throughout the house. She'd blown her cover. She'd blown everything. Her phone buzzed. Ji-won. I'm 2 blocks away. Where are you? Running. They know. They figured it out. Keep moving. I'm coming to you. McKenna rounded a corner and saw headlights. Ji-won's car screeched to a stop beside her. Get in! She dove into the car, and Ji-won floored it. Behind them, the Shin's son ran into the street, still shouting. You okay? Ji-won asked. I think so. I hit him with a vase. Good. He deserved it. Ji-won's phone rang. She answered on speaker. Yeah? Seung-ho's voice filled the car. What happened? The son caught her. Oh, we're clear now, but they know she was spying. Then we move tonight. I'm calling in the raid now. Seung-ho, it's midnight, McKenna said. Will they even respond? For evidence of child trafficking involving high-ranking officials, yes, they'll respond. His voice softened. Are you hurt? No, just scared. Ji-won, bring her to the office. She stays with me until this is over. The office turned out to be a nondescript building in Gangnam. Ji-won led McKenna to the top floor, where Seung-ho was already on the phone, barking orders in rapid Korean. He covered the phone when he saw her. You're okay. Define okay. Not bleeding, not arrested, not dead. Then yes, I'm okay. He finished his call and crossed the room to her. For a moment, McKenna thought he might hug her. Instead, he just looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. You did good work, he said. Really good work. I hit a guy with a vase and ran away. That's not exactly spy movie material. You survived. That's what matters. The next few hours blurred together. Seung-ho made call after call, coordinating with federal prosecutors, organizing evidence, planning the raid. McKenna sat on a couch in the corner, exhausted, but too wired to sleep. At 4 a.m, Seung-ho got the call he'd been waiting for. They're moving in now. They watched on a laptop as news footage showed federal agents swarming the Shin household. Prosecutor Shin was led out in handcuffs, his face a mask of rage. Madam Shin followed, screaming about lawyers and consequences. Their son tried to run and got tackled by 3 agents. "It's over," Ji-won said. "They're done." But McKenna couldn't celebrate, because on the news they were already spinning the story. Federal raid uncovers massive corruption scandal. Prosecutor General Shin arrested, along with associates. Investigation ongoing? Associates. They were already looking for everyone connected to the case, including her. "Seung-ho," she said quietly. "They're going to come for me, aren't they? As a witness?" "Probably. And if they dig into Park Min-seo, they'll find out she doesn't really exist. They'll find me. The real me." "Yes. So what do I do?" Seung-ho turned to face her. "You have 2 options. 1, we create a new identity and move you somewhere the investigation can't reach. You disappear completely. Start over. What's option 2? You testify. Tell them everything. Help put the Shins away for good. If I testify, everyone will know who I am. Daniel might find out where I am, and I'll be tied up in courts for months, maybe years. Daniel's not coming back, and yes, the trial will be long and difficult. But you'd also be a hero, the person who brought down a trafficking ring. That means something." McKenna thought about those children's faces, the ones marked as disposed. "If I testify, will it help save the kids?" "Yes. Your testimony would be crucial." "Then I'll do it. McKenna, think about this. Once you step into that courtroom, there's no going back. Your life changes forever." "My life already changed forever. At least this way, it means something." Seung-ho smiled, genuine and warm. "You're remarkable. You know that." Before McKenna could respond, the office door burst open. Federal agents poured in, guns drawn. "Nobody move! Kang Seung-ho, you're under arrest for conspiracy, racketeering, and obstruction of justice." Everything happened so fast. Agents grabbed Seung-ho and forced him to his knees. Ji-won reached for her weapon, but Seung-ho shouted, "Don't! Stand down!" An agent grabbed McKenna. "You too. Both of you are coming with us." "On what charge?" McKenna demanded. "Illegal wiretapping, breaking and entering, theft of confidential documents. Should I go on?" They were handcuffed and led out separately. McKenna tried to catch Seung-ho's eye, but there were too many agents between them. The last thing she saw before they pushed her into a police car was his face, calm and unafraid. She wanted to feel that calm. Instead, she felt terror. The interrogation room was cold and smelled like sweat and desperation. McKenna sat across from 2 federal prosecutors who looked at her like she was something they'd scraped off their shoes. "Let's start with your real name," the older one said. "McKenna Williams. And Park Min-seo is a fake identity. Created by Kang Seung-ho?" "Yes. For the purpose of industrial espionage? For the purpose of gathering evidence against the Shins." The prosecutors exchanged glances. The younger one leaned forward. "Ms. Williams, do you understand how much trouble you're in? Breaking and entering, wiretapping, fraud? You're looking at serious prison time. I was gathering evidence of child trafficking. By committing multiple felonies. By doing what nobody else was willing to do." The older prosecutor held up a hand. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell us everything. Who helped you? What you found? Where the evidence is. If you cooperate fully, we might be able to work out a deal." "What kind of deal?" "Immunity in exchange for testimony. But that only happens if you give us everything, including Kang Seung-ho's involvement." McKenna's stomach twisted. They wanted her to betray Seung-ho, to hand over the man who'd saved her, protected her, believed in her. The recording. She still had the recording of Seung-ho explaining his plans, the one she'd made as insurance. If she gave them that, they'd have everything they needed to put him away for years. "I know this is intense, and you're probably dying to know what happens next. But before we get to the ending, let me know in the comments. Should McKenna protect Seung-ho or save herself? And don't forget to like this video if you're invested in this story. I want a lawyer, McKenna said. Ms. Williams, I want a lawyer. I'm not saying anything else without legal representation. The prosecutors looked annoyed, but they couldn't refuse. They left her alone in the interrogation room for what felt like hours. McKenna put her head on the table and tried not to cry. She'd tried to do the right thing, tried to help those kids. And now she was facing prison. Her baby was in danger, and Seung-ho was locked up because of her. The door opened. McKenna looked up expecting a lawyer. Instead, a man in an expensive suit walked in. He looked familiar, but she couldn't place him. Ms. Williams, I'm Attorney Kim. I've been retained to represent you. By who? That's confidential. But I can tell you that your situation is more complicated than the prosecutors are letting on. What do you mean? Attorney Kim sat down across from her. The evidence you gathered is being used to build cases against, not just the Shins, but their entire network. Dozens of arrests are happening as we speak. You're not a criminal, Ms. Williams. You're the prosecution's star witness. They're just trying to scare you into full cooperation. So, I'm not going to prison? Not if we play this right. But you need to make a decision. The prosecutors want Kang Seung-ho. If you give him to them, you walk away free and clear. If you don't, things get more difficult. McKenna closed her eyes. What happens to Seung-ho if I cooperate? He's already facing multiple charges. Your testimony would just add to the pile. He's looking at 20 years minimum. 20 years. Seung-ho would be 51 when he got out. His life destroyed. Because of her. And if I don't testify against him? Then you face charges for the illegal surveillance, probably 2 to 3 years. Your baby would be born in prison. It wasn't a choice. It was a trap. Can I talk to him? McKenna asked. To Seung-ho? That's not advisable. I don't care about advisable. I need to talk to him. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Attorney Kim considered. I'll see what I can do. 20 minutes later, they brought Seung-ho into a different room. He looked tired, but unhurt. When he saw McKenna, his expression softened. You okay? He asked. No. None of this is okay. McKenna's voice broke. They want me to testify against you. They're saying if I don't, I go to prison and lose my baby. Then testify. What? Give them what they want. I'll be fine. Seung-ho, you're looking at 20 years. And you're looking at raising your child. Easy choice. He leaned forward, his voice urgent. Listen to me. This was always a possibility. I knew the risks when I agreed to help you. You don't owe me anything. I owe you everything. No. We're even. Your mother saved my family. I helped you save yours. We're even. Tears streamed down McKenna's face. I can't do this. I can't send you to prison. You're not sending me anywhere. I made my own choices. Seung-ho smiled sadly. Besides, I've got good lawyers. I'll probably get the sentence reduced. Maybe I'll only do 10 years. Only 10 years? Do you hear yourself? McKenna. He reached across the table and took her hands. The guards tensed, but didn't intervene. You have a chance at a real life, a safe life for you and your baby. Take it. Please. For me. For your mom. For everyone who didn't get that chance. There has to be another way. There isn't. And that's okay. Some prices are worth paying. The guard stepped forward. Time's up. Seung-ho squeezed her hands once more. Be brave, like you've always been. Then they took him away, and McKenna was alone again, with an impossible choice that suddenly felt very simple. She couldn't let him sacrifice himself for her, not when she had insurance. McKenna called Attorney Kim back in. I need my phone, the one that was taken when I was arrested. Why? Because I have something that might change everything. They brought her the phone. McKenna pulled up the recording app with shaking fingers. Months of conversations with Seung-ho. Every plan, every admission, every illegal thing he'd said. and one conversation in particular, the one where he'd explained his arrangement with Prosecutor Shin, the one that proved Shin had been corrupt long before McKenna got involved. "Give this to the prosecutors," she said, handing the phone to Attorney Kim. "But tell them I have conditions." "What conditions?" "Immunity for me and for Seung-ho. In exchange, I testify against the Shins and their network. I give them everything. But Seung-ho walks. Ms. Williams, that's not how this works. They're not going to let a known criminal. He helped expose a child trafficking ring. He risked everything to bring down corrupt officials. That has to count for something. It doesn't count for immunity. Then make it count. Because if they don't agree, I delete this recording, and suddenly their case against Shin gets a lot weaker." Attorney Kim stared at her. "You're bluffing." "Try me." He wasn't used to being challenged. McKenna could see it in his face, but he also saw that she meant every word. "I'll talk to them," he said finally. "But I can't make promises." The negotiation took 6 hours. 6 hours of McKenna sitting in a holding cell, praying that her gamble would work. 6 hours of wondering if she'd just destroyed everything. Finally, Attorney Kim returned. "They've agreed to a modified deal." McKenna's heart raced. "Modified how?" "You get full immunity in exchange for testimony. Seung-ho gets his sentence reduced to time, served plus 3 years probation. He has to shut down his criminal operations and submit to regular monitoring. No, if he stays clean, the charges get sealed after the probation period. 3 years probation instead of 20 years in prison. Yes, it's the best we're going to get." It wasn't perfect, but it was so much better than she dared hope. "I'll take it." "There's one more thing. The prosecutors want to keep you in protective custody until the trial. They're worried the Shin's associates might retaliate. For how long? However long it takes. Could be months. Months in protective custody. Months of isolation. But her baby would be safe. Seung-ho would be free. The kids would be saved." "Okay," McKenna said. "I'll do it." The trial became national news. Every day, reporters camped outside the courthouse, documenting the fall of Prosecutor General Shun and his network. McKenna testified for 3 days straight, and walking the jury through everything she'd found. The photographs, the ledgers, the bank accounts. The defense tried to paint her as a criminal herself, a foreigner who'd illegally spied on a respected family. But the evidence was too damning. The children who'd been recovered testified. The financial records spoke for themselves. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Prosecutor Shin got 40 years. His wife got 30. Their son got 25. Dozens of others were sentenced to various terms. And the children, 73 of them recovered from around the world, got to go home. When it was over, McKenna walked out of the courthouse a free woman. 7 months pregnant now, exhausted, emotionally drained, but free. Seung-ho was waiting on the courthouse steps. "Hey," he said. "Hey yourself," she couldn't stop smiling. "You're really free. Thanks to you. Thanks to both of us." They stood there awkwardly, neither sure what to say. So much had happened. So much had changed. "I have something for you," Seung-ho said. He handed her an envelope. "It's a trust fund for your baby. Enough to cover education, medical care, everything they'll need." "Seung-ho, I can't accept this." "Yes, you can. You earned it. Besides, I shut down my operations like the deal required. I've got more money than I know what to do with. Let me do this. Please." McKenna opened the envelope and saw the number. It was more money than she'd ever imagined. This is too much. It's not nearly enough, but it's a start. What are you going to do now? If you're not running your organization anymore? "I'm thinking about going legitimate. Real estate, maybe. Or security consulting. Haven't decided yet." He smiled. "What about you?" "I don't know. Find an apartment. Get ready for the baby. Figure out how to be a person instead of just a survivor." "You're already a person. An amazing one." The air between them felt charged. McKenna wanted to say something profound, something that captured how much Sung-ho meant to her, how he'd saved her in every way a person could be saved. Instead, she said, "Do you want to get coffee?" "I'd love to." They went to a small cafe near the courthouse, ordered drinks, and sat by the window, watching Seoul move around them. "Can I ask you something?" Sung-ho said. "Why did you keep the recordings of our conversations?" McKenna had known this question was coming. "Insurance, in case you betrayed me. And you used them to save me instead." "Yeah. Funny how that worked out. You didn't have to do that. You could have just saved yourself." "I could have. But then I'd be the kind of person who lets good people suffer for helping them. And I'm trying really hard not to be that person." Sung-ho reached across the table and took her hand. "For what it's worth, I never would have betrayed you." "I know that now." "Do you? Really?" McKenna met his eyes. "Yes. I trust you, Sung-ho, completely. And that terrifies me." "Why?" "Because the last time I trusted someone completely, he put me in the hospital. Because trust is dangerous, and you're dangerous, and I don't know how to reconcile those things. I'm not Daniel. I would never hurt you." "I know. Intellectually, I know that. But trauma doesn't respond to logic." Sung-ho nodded slowly. "Then we go slow. We take our time. And I prove to you every single day that you're safe with me." "We?" McKenna's heart skipped. "You want there to be a we?" "If you do, no pressure. But yes, I'd like there to be a we. I'm about to have a baby." "I noticed. A baby that isn't yours. So?" "So that's a lot to take on. Most guys would run screaming." Sung-ho smiled. "I'm not most guys, and for what it's worth, I already care about that baby. They're part of you. That makes them important to me." McKenna felt tears sting her eyes again. Happy tears this time. "You're really serious about this?" "Completely serious." "Okay. Then yes. Let's try the we thing. Slowly." "Slowly," Sung-ho agreed. "Starting with coffee. And maybe dinner sometimes. Definitely dinner. And late-night conversations when I can't sleep. Whenever you need." They sat there, holding hands across a coffee shop table, and for the first time in longer than McKenna could remember, she felt hopeful. Not the desperate hope of survival, but the real kind, the kind that believed in tomorrows. The next few months were a blur of preparation. McKenna found an apartment with Sung-ho's help, a safe place in a quiet neighborhood. He visited regularly, always respectful, always careful not to push. They had dinner, watched movies, talked about everything and nothing. And slowly, carefully, McKenna let herself fall in love. So her son was born on a cold January morning. 7 pounds, 3 ounces, with a healthy set of lungs and his mother's eyes. McKenna named him James, after her father. Sung-ho was the first visitor at the hospital. He brought flowers and a stuffed elephant, and looked at baby James with wonder. "He's perfect," Sung-ho said. "He really is." McKenna adjusted James in her arms. "Do you want to hold him?" "Can I?" "Of course." Sung-ho took the baby with careful, nervous hands. James fussed for a second, then settled, his tiny fingers wrapping around Sung-ho's thumb. "Hi, James," Sung-ho whispered. "I'm going to help take care of you, if that's okay. I'm going to make sure you and your mom are always safe. That's a promise." McKenna watched them and felt her heart expand in ways she hadn't known were possible. This man, and this complicated, dangerous, wonderful man, was going to be part of their lives, part of their family. 3 months later, Sung-ho proposed, not with grand gestures or elaborate plans, just the two of them in McKenna's apartment, James asleep in his crib, late-night comedy playing on the TV. "Marry me," Sung-ho said suddenly. McKenna looked up from the ice cream they were sharing. "What?" "Marry me. I know it's fast. I know we're still figuring things out. But I love you. I love James. I want to build a life with both of you. So marry me. Seung-ho, if you need time, I understand. If you want to wait, we'll wait. But I needed to ask. I needed you to know that this isn't casual for me. You and James, you're everything. McKenna set down the ice cream. Her hands were shaking. Ask me properly. What? You just said marry me. That's not a question. Ask me properly. Seung-ho laughed and got down on one knee, right there in her living room. He pulled out a ring box, which meant he'd been planning this. McKenna Williams, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that you made the right choice? Yes. The word came out choked with tears. Yes, absolutely. Yes. He slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her, gentle and sweet and full of promise. It was McKenna's first kiss since Daniel, and it felt like reclaiming something stolen. It felt like hope. They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony with just a handful of friends. Ji-won was there, looking uncomfortable in a dress. Seung-ho's sister flew in from London with her family, a few of McKenna's friends from the trial, people who'd supported her through everything. No big celebration, no elaborate party. Just two people who'd survived impossible things, promising to face the future together. As part of the ceremony, Seung-ho formally adopted James. Signed papers making him legally responsible for a child who wasn't biologically his, but was his in every way that mattered. You're stuck with us now, McKenna teased as they signed the paperwork. Best trap I ever walked into. Their life together wasn't perfect. Seung-ho still had connections to his old world, people who called looking for favors he couldn't give anymore. McKenna still had nightmares about the Shins, about Daniel, about everything she'd survived. But they faced it together. It wasn't the ending McKenna had imagined when she first arrived in Korea, broken and alone. It was better. Because it was real. Because it was earned. Because it was theirs, and that made all the difference.